Our next experience story that we're going to hear is from William Tagoona, and it's going to be an audio presentation. Roberta will help me out because I'm not competent with this. William Tagoona was a longtime broadcaster for the CBC Northern Service in Kuujjuaq, Quebec. He was born in Baker Lake, Nunavut. While working as a journalist, Tagoona also worked on his music. He wrote songs in Inuktitut, preserving his culture and heritage. He is currently the communications coordinator and media relations for the Makivik Corporation. His experience as a child with TB was pre-recorded for this meeting. So this is him speaking to us.
I'm William Tagoona, now in my 60s. I'm 65 years old and living in Nunavik. I've been here for many, many years now. Married to somebody from Nunavik, Sarah May Tagoona. Originally from Baker Lake in the Northwest Territories, a time when it was still in the Northwest Territories. My dad was an Anglican minister in the Kivalliq region. We've lived in Rankin Inlet, Anahuac, and here I am in Quebec. My experience with tuberculosis goes back to the 1950s when we had an epidemic in the Kivalliq region. I was very young then when I got infected with tuberculosis. I was only 5 years old. When I get x-rays now, doctors will see the scar from my TB when I was 5 years old. Sometimes it scares them. They think it's cancer, but I have absolutely no idea how I got tuberculosis, and if people were in the community at the time were even sick. I was way too young. All I remember is that I was leaving in the wintertime. There was no runways, and the airplane, if I remember right, was I think an old cancel. Airplanes that they call cancels, and I remember my dad taking me down to the sea ice where the plane was in the wintertime, and I was leaving with my mom. I had no idea what was happening at the time, and because I was only 5, and my dad saying, I will pray for you. I still remember that. And we took off, and we went to this very strange town after a number of hours in the air. I got to know that that place was Churchill, Manitoba. Going into Churchill, I remember being very cold as a 5-year-old. And eventually, after a very unsettling time, I followed my mom to this very cold house. And I know now that in those years it was the Akudlik. They had probably a very old cabin there that they were using for patients. Inuit at the time in the 1950s weren't very important at all to people in the South, and they had really no care how we felt, so they put us into a very cold house. And there was a whole bunch of us Inuit, no bed to sleep. We were just sitting on the floor and hungry. I remember being very hungry and very cold and sticking very close to my mom. And eventually someone walked in with a pot of oranges. And I remember the oranges being frozen. And we ate them. They were so delicious because we were hungry. Slept on the floor with my mom. I remember that still. And she comforted me as much as she could. I had no idea what we were doing. I didn't know that I was sick. And then we flew on to a plane the next day or 2 days later. And we ended up in another place again. And this time I was being separated from my mom. Little did I know that my mom was being taken to another place, I think to Winnipeg. She was sick with something else. I don't know what it was. And where we got off was to a place called Clearwater Lake. There was a sanitarium there for tuberculosis. And I was one of the patients that was being sent there. And I don't remember being on the plane or on the same trip, but my sister, oldest sister, was also with us at the sanitarium. And my brother, Eric Hanna Tagoona, one of the persons that got known as to be one of the experimental Eskimos. And then my older brother, David Tagoona, was also with us in the sanitarium, but I don't remember traveling with them. I just remember being in the sanitarium with them that whole time, and it was a very scary experience. I think with tuberculosis back in the 1950s, our determination to survive was huge. Nowadays, they treat them at home. It seems so easy nowadays. I just can't believe why people would not go for the treatment of taking medication and following what the health people want you to do at home. Must be so nice. We had to be away from home for years to survive back in the 1950s, and to be abused in the sanitariums. Those sanitariums were bad places. They were not good at all. They abused people because these were all kids. There'd be a whole bunch of us lined up in one ward. We were all Native people. There was First Nations and Inuit in my dorm when I was 5 years old, and we got beaten up. I used to get beaten up for doing what a 5-year-old will do. I used to pee in bed sometimes, and nurses would be waiting in the morning with badminton bats to beat you up. These are the kind of things that we went through, and I've watched some of my fellow boys being played with by nurses in those years. You won't see those nowadays. It seems so easy now, for a lot easier, but the disease is still as deadly today as it was then. We lost so many people. We don't ever want to see that in the North nowadays, and we urge people in the North, our people, if you ever get tuberculosis, take care of it, because we've already gone through the suffering from that many years ago, and we never want to ever see that again. There's people nowadays in their 60s, 70s who have never seen their relatives again, and their lives were broken from a tuberculosis. So please don't ever go back there. The reason why tuberculosis grows so fast in the Arctic is the atmosphere, of course, in the north. We live in a very cold climate. You are stuck indoors a lot more than you are down south. Our houses are small. It's very easy for the disease to spread in those small little enclosures. Like I always say, some of those apartments that we live in the north, some of those houses that we live in the north, would be used as a porch in some places down south, such as Montreal. I can go to someone's house in Montreal, and his porch is the same size as some of the homes that we live in the Arctic. So a lot of the reason why the disease grows is poverty in the north. People are together. It's hygiene. Yet when you have too many people living together, it's very hard to have your privacy. We know how privacy and hygiene are very closely linked. And people are way too close together in a very small little space, and I'm sure that is very much a part of the disease being so hard to isolate from other people. When we talk about building houses and that, it becomes very difficult, because we know that housing is expensive. It didn't seem like we really had a housing issue in the olden days, but somehow it crept, and it's getting worse and worse. governments just aren't keeping up. The private industry, of course, tries to take care of building some houses that they can sell themselves to those that can afford it. But when you look at a whole society where mass unemployment is so rampant and that there really is no money to go around, how can they possibly buy a house, build their own house?
So William's story gave us another glimpse of the realities for him in the 1950s. I want to turn now to Ron Gerard, who is a renowned Métis fiddler who performs at community gatherings as special events and conferences. He's originally from Camperville, Manitoba, and currently lives in Harrison Mills in British Columbia. He will be sharing his experiences with TB with us this morning. Please help me welcome Ron Gerard.
Thank you very much. I'm not much of a spokesman on a microphone. I know I remember calling a Migo a couple times. But I was born in Ethelbert, Manitoba, 1943. What happened there was every fall, we had people from Pine Creek and Camperville going out to harvest time. And they caught a little bit of work there after blueberry picking. I went to residential school in Camperville. My name was Ronald Mosdale, and we were abandoned as kids, but our Uncle Paul had a huge family, probably about 12 kids, took us in. There was 4 of us kids. And at times, we spent the whole summer, instead of going on holidays, into school, because nobody could afford to pick us up. But enough about me. About a year and some change, found out I had TB. And how that came across, I was getting pimples or rash or something. And my doctor said, well, let's check this out. I'll take you to a skin specialist. So we went through about 2 months of procedures, and finally they discovered I had TB, and they said it's been dormant. And going back in the residential school in Pine Creek, is anybody here familiar with Pine Creek? Hello, how you doing? The Pine Creek Band, yes. The post office was Camperville. It was a Métis community. Anyway, in the residential school, I had a little buddy there. We've been buddies probably 8 years. But at times, he'd be gone for a while. One time, I think it was a couple of years, I haven't seen him. He came back. He looked like a Munoz. He was pale and had a scar in the back. Raymond Flatfoot, I remember his name. And they didn't talk about TB much. It seemed like they were trying to hide it or something. But anyway, there's a couple others that came back with a body cast, like they mentioned before. People with a body cast. And going back to my ailment, I went to the skin doctor, and you put me through tests, doubled them up, twice on a dome going in, ultrasounds, doubled those up, went twice, x-rays. Then they discovered I had TB. So what we did was the doctor gave me 3 months of pills. And he told me the first month, if those pills don't agree with you, we'll change the prescription. And after 3 weeks of taking these pills, I got very sick. Not to a point where you couldn't walk or something, but you had all kinds of ailments like diarrhea, dry throat, etc. And I had to change the pills to get a lesser dosage, maybe. They don't tell you much about TB still. Still don't tell you much. So anyway, I had those for 3 months. I tell you, it was hard. It was hard, but I'm here. I'm standing up here. I guess we're doing the right thing. Then I'm going through treatments. It's a cabinet. It's around like this. And it's got the lights, something like a tanning bed, only you're upright. And you go, now I'm going once a week because after traveling, I moved. I used to go a couple of times a week. What you do is you stand in this cabinet and they have all the lights on. And you could, and the rash went away. And the pimples, they all disappeared. So I feel like we're in the right direction. I'm healed. It's just maybe another month of those treatments. The light, the cabinet, and that's about it. I guess I've covered everything. Any questions out there? No? Okay, that's, thank you very much. How about a big hand for the people that were a year ahead of me? Thank you.
Thank you, Ron, for sharing those insights into your life. Our final speaker in this group this morning is Boas Mitsuk. Boas Mitsuk is Inuk. He is currently the Recreation Director in Hopedale, Inuit. Just a minute, let me get this right. Recreation Director in Hopedale, Inuit Community Government. He has traveled from his home community of Hopedale, Newfoundland, Labrador to share his lived experiences with TB. Please help me welcome Boas.
Good morning, everyone. First, I'd like to thank Ron for sharing his story of dealing with the life experience of TB. There's a few reasons why I decided to come to this conference. One was I am from Hopedale, Second part was there is cases in Hopedale, and the majority of the cases for the outbreak is youth. And I decided to speak on behalf of the youth because we all know that our youth can be afraid to speak up for themselves. And another reason is, the reason why I'm here is the life experience of dealing and treating TB. I guess it started for me when I lived in another community in Nain. I lived there for 2 months working for recreation. And then I moved back home in the end of September. And then I had a call from our public health like 2 weeks into October that they want me going for a TB sample, scan sample. And what they do is they give you a needle. If you react to that needle, that means you got a active case for TB. So from October, November, December, I was taking 3 pills twice a week. And then we had to do blood samples once a month, sputum samples, 3 sputum samples once a month, and then chest x-ray out in Goose Bay every 3 months. And then that was 2016. January 2017, I had a call from hospital saying that I needed to do a teleconference with the head doctor in Goose Bay who was treating for TB. I found out then that my sleeping TB has become active TB. So once it become active, I was in isolation in my own home for 3 weeks. So I couldn't leave the house, I couldn't leave my room, and I had to take 11 pills a day for the first 4 months. But then for the first 3 weeks I was isolated, I looked at the positives. I was like, okay, I gotta sit down and focus on my health. And then I said to myself in my mind, if I'm gonna do this mentally, why not do this physically as well? I started working out every day when I was home. And I quit drinking for a month, and that helped a lot with what I was trying to process, what was going on. And then there's a funny side to being a positive about this. One of the 11 pills that I was taking for the first 4 months, they told us that it would make, every time you went to the bathroom, your fluid would be orange. And the fun thing for me, it worked out in my favor because orange is my favorite color. So I got to see my favorite color every day. And then in February, I started working with Kias. It's almost like a group home that we just started in Hopedale. And we take care of kids instead of sending them to foster cares in Newfoundland or anywhere else. One of my youth started noticing, like, how come he goes to the public health every day to take pills? And I said, no matter who you are, no matter how healthy you are, how fit you are, like, I'm not a smoker, I don't do drugs, but no matter who you are, if you come in contact with TB, you can catch it no matter who you are. And I explained that to him, so just make sure you watch what you're doing, take care of your health. And after the first 4 months, my pills reduced from 11 pills a day to 8 pills a day. And that's when I realized the orange was gone. So that was the kind of sad part for me. I couldn't see my favorite color every day. But like, it was a positive note. After the first 4 months, knowing that my medication was going on from 11 pills a day to 8 pills a day was a positive sign that I'm starting to beat this. Not just mentally, but like physically. I knew in my mind when I was working out and cutting back on drinking that not just mentally that I could do this, but physically my body knew it could do this as well. And then for the next 3 months, I was on them 8 pills. And then last month, I went down to 4 pills. It was a long process, especially the first 3 weeks in isolation. I had no contact with my family, no contact with my friends. And what I used to do, like I said, I just started working out and just try to stay positive. Because like a lot of youth these days, they don't see the positive anymore. Because once they find out they got something, they turn away. They turn to drugs, they turn to smoking, turn to drinking. And like what I noticed in my hometown was people, they get neglected for having TB because like some of the other youth that don't have it, they'll put down the youth that do have TB. I've experienced myself, and I got a brother. He's 4 years older than me. Like, I'm 29, and he's 33. And he even put me down for having TB. It's like, it don't happen just to our youth. It happens to our adults, our elders, anyone who has TB. they'll get teased for it. And I think that's why a lot of our youth are afraid to speak up, because they're afraid of how people will look at them and how people will accept them. And like, even after I'm done, like I done my medications now in July. So right now I am clean of TB, but we still have to do the process of going through chest x-rays every 3 months, blood samples every month, and sputum samples every month. It took a long time, but I'm just glad I'm here today to share my experience with you, whereas if I never took this serious, I probably wouldn't be standing here today. So thank you.